Baalbek is located in eastern Lebanon, in the famous Bekaa Valley, between the Litani and Aci rivers. It is located at the intersection of two commercial routes of historical importance, one between the Mediterranean and the interior Syria, and the other between northern Syria and northern Palestine. The origins of Baalbek are a mystery. It was assumed that initially it was a Phoenician city, center of the cult to the Babylonian god Baal-Hadad, and its name would mean city of Baal. Later, the Greeks would assimilate this deity to Helios, from there that happened to be called Heliopolis. However, there is no archaeological evidence of that supposed initial Phoenician settlement, and given the absence of references in the historical sources of such a settlement, it is likely that this was either of very little importance or, much more likely, non-existent. The name Baalbek does not denote an immeasurable antiquity. Nor was it used during Roman times, nor is there any evidence that it has ever been used before. The first firm references about the city date back precisely to the period after the Roman conquest. The famous terrace of Baalbek is one of the main assets of the defenders of the ancient astronauts hypothesis, according to which, in a distant past, inhabitants of other worlds would have visited the Earth. These navigators of the interstellar spaces would have left, as evidence of their passage, scattered myths and inexplicable buildings. The Great Terrace is a platform built with the largest known carved stones, megalithic blocks that were cut with great precision and placed to form a foundation of 460,000 square meters of surface. In this platform are the three colossal blocks known as the trilithon, each of which is almost 20 meters long, with a height of approximately 4 meters and a width of 3. The weight of each of these monstrous monoliths has been estimated between 1,000 and 2,000 tons, are red granite, and were extracted from the quarry more than a kilometer away, down the valley with respect to the construction. At the beginning of 2014 an incredible discovery was made in Russia. In remote Mount Choria in southern Siberia, researchers had found an absolutely massive wall of granite stones. Some of these gigantic granite stones are estimated to weigh more than 3,000 tons, and as will be seen later, many of them were cut with flat surfaces, right angles, and sharp corners. Nothing of this magnitude has been discovered before. The largest stone found in the megalithic ruins of Baalbek, Lebanon, is at least 1,500 tons. Megalithic ruins of Baalbek, Lebanon. When they shared the amazing images of these stone structures, many argued that they were natural formations, perhaps because they had trouble conceiving such huge ancient ruins in such remote places. Discoveries that seem to be many hundreds of thousands of years old. Perhaps even as old as the Great Sphinx. More and more are being learned about them, with more and more daring explorations of the ruins that are taking place. Recently a team discovered a vault in one of the stone megaliths, an access vault that led them to an artificially constructed stone cave system. These underground structures are truly massive, and have certainly been built by an intelligent builder. Hidden for many millennia, these caves are not only massive but were built with blocks placed on top of each other that are more than 15 meters in length in some cases, making these stones have thousands of tons of weight, and were apparently placed effortlessly in the form of underground walls. This discovery has not really shed light on how the ancients built such structures, but rather pushed their apparent capabilities further away from our understanding. Not only is the purpose of these structures a vast mystery, but they also contain stones placed larger than any we have discovered, eclipsing even the unfinished stone found in the ancient Chinese quarry known as Yangshan. A stone can be found half-cut from the bed of rock and that is calculated weighs more than 16,000 tons. Academics say that the huge Yangshan stone has remained in the quarry because they could not move it. However, in Russia we have stones placed in a system of caves that surpass even that of Yangshan. How many natural formations are actually being extremely resistant to extremely large stone structures? Perhaps there are many granite hills of stone and perhaps even mountains that dot our land, which were, several thousand years ago, the great structures of an advanced forgotten civilization. Even more remarkable is the fact that in the quarry there is an even larger block known to the Arabs as Hajar el-Gubal. In 1851, The French scholar Louis Félicien de Saulcy, who would later perform one of the first systematic excavations of Jerusalem, remained in Baalbek 2 days, from 16 to May 18, and became convinced that the basement of the Great Terrace were the remains of a pre-Roman temple, left this opinion seated in his book Voyage hors de la mer Morte, Journey Around the Dead Sea, dating from 1864. The hypothesis of extraterrestrial origin of the terrace of Baalbek would still be late. The first to be exhibited was the Belarusian physicist Matist M. Agorist in 1959. Agorist is considered as the first scientist to advance the hypothesis that the Earth was visited in prehistoric times by intelligences coming from outer space. His famous article Astronauts of Antiquity, Kosmonauti Drevnosti, was published in 1961. In his hypothesis, Agorist attaches great importance to the biblical story of Enoch, and to the obscure reference of Genesis which speaks of the Nephilim. He also proposed that tektites are proof of such extraterrestrial visits and that what really happened in Sodom and Gomorrah was a nuclear explosion. For Agorist, the Great Terrace would have been an airstrip for cosmonauts of antiquity. Interestingly, Agorist's only source of information about Baalbek seems to have been an indefinite book published in Paris in 1898. Agorist's hypothesis regarding Baalbek in particular, and the ancient astronauts in general, did school. Zacharias Sitchin and Daniken also follow this same line. The countless tons of the Baalbek blocks seem so fascinating that there are authors who are reluctant to mention them, even though they have nothing to do with the subject they are dealing with. For example, Charles Berlitz, who in the midst of a catalogue of wonders appearing in his great work The Bermuda Triangle mentions the enormous foundation stones of the Temple of Jupiter in Baalbek, Syria, the construction of the temple and one of which weighs 2,000 tons. By the way, Baalbek is currently not in Syria, but in Lebanon, but let's overlook this little lapse. It is to be noted that the speculations attributed by the Baalbek terrace to the action of the ancient astronauts are based on two basic assumptions: that the platform was built in a very remote past, long before the temples that crown it. Weight of the large blocks exceeds the carrying capacity of the human technology of the era in which the platform was raised, and still today. But are these assumptions true? If we follow the legend to the letter, as it is repeated again and again, we can only conclude that the ruins of Baalbek are simply impossible and inexplicable, a mystery without human solution. That the platform was constructed in a very remote past, long before the temples that crown it, that the weight of the large blocks exceeds the carrying capacity of the human technology of the era in which the platform was raised, and even in the present day. In the years 1904 to 1905 a German expedition carried out the first systematic excavation in the ruins of Baalbek. German archaeologists excavated through the platform and made very interesting findings. The seemingly solid terrace is built of solid megaliths only on its outer walls. In the interior, under the forum, they found a labyrinth of chambers filled with compacted debris, with brick walls in the typical Roman honeycomb shape. Below all this, the bed of solid rock. In short, only masonry and Roman remains. The foundations of the temples are based on the rock bed to support its weight, since the platform would simply sink if rested on it. Megalithic walls are actually a declining containment wall. From the supposed Phoenician settlement, no remains were found, or any other of an immeasurable antiquity. Much less, remains of laser equipment, atomic fusion batteries or plasma engines. One of the most effective and impressive resources used by Roman engineers and architects was the creation of massive terraced platforms to support large buildings or groups of them. This idea came from Greece, but it was the Romans who managed to develop all the structural advantages of building massive substructures to exploit the functional potential of geographically rugged places. Examples of such terraces have been found in Titis, North Africa, Terracina, Italy, Praeneste, Palestine, and many other sites.